Hello, this is Justin Williams. I'm joined today by special guest co-host Mike Rose, former NC State football player, now current defensive end in the Canadian Football League. But before we get started with our reflection on the NC State Virginia Tech game last night, this podcast is brought to you in part by JFQ Lending. With interest rates below 3%, there has never been a better time to lock in a low fixed interest rate on your mortgage. You'll never need to think about refinancing again. Set it and forget it. And with JFQ Lending, you are guaranteed to get the highest level of customer service. They have an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and over 3,000 five-star reviews. Give Hunter Clausen a call today at 480-513-3992 or email Hunter directly at hclausen@jfqlending.com. That's HCLAUSSEN@jfqlending.com. JFQ Lending, Inc., Equal Access Lender, licensed in over 40 states, www.jfqlending.com. And while you're at it, go over to the Wolfpacker.com and be sure to use promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial for our premium content. Obviously, we're now 2 weeks into the football season, the NC State football season, so lots of premium content coming up there regularly, so be sure to check that out. But, Mike, late night last night, another 8 p.m. kickoff, this time not in Carter Finley Stadium, but does not go the Pac's way as it did in Game 1. Virginia Tech comes away with the win 45-24. In a game that Virginia Tech easily could have scored another touchdown there at the end. They showed a little bit of mercy, taking a knee at the 1-yard line as time expired. But just kind of initial reactions, Bailey Hockman comes in as the starter. He starts the second half, plays a couple drives, and then we see Devin Leary take over for the last 3 offensive drives. And it was another tough night for the NC State defense. But, Mike, just what were your main takeaways from the game last night to get us started off here?
My main takeaways are, I don't know the scheme of the defense, but, I really do believe we have to shore up the run defense because it's looking like we have no edge a lot of the time. I don't know the scheme of the defense, but I do see that our scheme is limiting, personally, this is my opinion, I think it's limiting what the guys can do. Because I'm seeing guys, doing their job plus. And I feel like a one-gap defense would help out much more. Because I'm seeing guys, changing gaps and guys coming from safety and linebacker to fill the edge when I just believe, you could just put a guy to play the edge. That's my opinion. That's the bad takeaway I would say is that the defense is going to take some time. Now, offensively, I still saw the run game. I still saw it's there. It's still thriving. And I think that, I do enjoy Bailey Hockman as a quarterback, and I do believe it is still too early to give up on Bailey Hockman at this point.
Well, let's start off with your point on the defense. Virginia Tech, obviously, very effective in the run game last night. They run for 314 yards and average 7.7 yards per carry.
I didn't know that statistic.
That was, yes. So it definitely backed up your claim that the run defense needs some help. Now, in fairness to NC State, they were without some important pieces in Game 2. Tanner Engel, of course, carries over, wasn't available for Game 2. He wasn't available after 2 snaps in Week 1 against Wake Forest, but one of the noticeable absences from last week was Peyton Wilson, who was really an enforcer in that first game against Wake Forest. He committed a couple boneheaded penalties, a couple personal fouls, but other than that, he had a very solid game, in my opinion, against Wake Forest, and it was very noticeable that an enforcer like him was missed on that NC State defense. Both Wilson and Engel finished 1 and 2 in tackling for the Wolfpack in 2019, and could easily do the same again this year. So if you go without your two leading tacklers, obviously you're going to struggle a little bit making tackles, and that was certainly evident last night. But, Coach Doran talked a little bit about how he was pleased about the improvement in setting the edge. The problem tonight really seemed to be, winning the battle up front at the line of scrimmage, something that NC State did a good job of on both sides of the ball in the week 1 win against Wake Forest. But certainly last night, it's no hyperbole to say that NC State was rather manhandled at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, something that will have to improve moving forward as they prepare for another physical matchup against a stout Pittsburgh defense in week 3, noon kickoff next Saturday. But Mike, any other thoughts on just kind of the battle at the line of scrimmage last night? It seemed like, Virginia Tech just kind of manned up and beat them at the line.
I mean, Virginia Tech came to play. They definitely were playing some bully ball with the big quarterback running the ball. I think that we definitely need to spend some time working on shocking and shedding in practice. More time getting off blocks and more getting up the field in the backfield, causing disruption instead of sitting on the line. I think that more 4-down fronts, because I actually saw there was some progress when they ran some 4-down fronts. That helped out a lot. I don't know the type of players we have per se, so I don't know schematically if they're better for a 3-man front. But I will say that I definitely think that at all levels of Pac football, they need to work shocking and shedding on defense and just tackling. I mean, it's natural for some people, but I know with COVID and all that, they might, they're probably having a hard time. They need to get used to physical tackling consistently, because running to the ball is great. I mean, it's a staple and it helps. But if you're running to the ball and you're not making the tackle, I mean, it's kind of.
Well, another noticeable absence yesterday, or last night rather, was junior corner Taishan Smith, who missed the game due to injury. He was a starter in week 1 against Wake Forest. And then, of course, at safety behind Tanner Engel, who was absent due to injury, you had Rakeem Ashford, the sophomore transfer, the JUCO transfer, that really only arrived in the NC State program in the past month and a half. He goes out there, he comes out of the game with an injury, and then Khalid Martin, of course, comes in his replacement in a very scary injury there, and I believe it was early 4th quarter at that point. Yeah. But luckily, it ends up being a hip injury rather than a head injury, which it certainly appeared to be on TV. They had to get the ambulance out there. He goes off on a stretcher, but he was conscious, he was cognizant, and this morning we learned that he was being transferred back to Raleigh from Virginia. He was transferred last night to Roanoke. So definitely our thoughts and prayers with the Martin family, and obviously a scary scene. Just one quick thing on that, as a player that, has experience in those types of situations, how easy or hard is it to respond to something like that, seeing a teammate go down like that? And just as a player, a defender, do you have any hesitation after you see such a scary hit like that, and with the reality that each play could be your last?
Hesitation causes injury. I believe that some are freak accidents, and then there's no contact stuff. But if you're on a football field and you're not going full speed, you're asking to be injured. I think that kid was just doing what he was told to do, going full speed, and it just ended up not going his way, and that happens sometimes. The good thing is he's a freshman, so I'd rather he get hurt now than later.
Well, let's obviously the secondary is going to need to get a little bit healthier, and it's a young secondary to start, so temper your expectations as the season goes along, but definitely look for the growth and improvement. That's really the main thing that you need to look for NC State fans moving forward in 2020. And obviously the play up front needs to improve if the NC State defense wants to get better results as the season goes along.
Oh, for sure.
But let's transition a little bit to the offense. I know you mentioned that your initial takeaway is it's a little too early to go away from Bailey Hockman. He struggled early. entering that final drive of the second half, he only had 4 passing yards and 1 completion at that point, completely alternate to the 13 for 13 performance he came out so hot against Wake Forest in the 45-42 win. And, it has to be difficult as a quarterback understanding that the anticipated starter for the season is right there waiting to come in. You got him breathing down your neck, and that creates pressure. But speaking of pressure, it didn't matter who the quarterback was last night, whether it was Hockman or Leary. They were running for their lives constantly. Virginia Tech gets 6 sacks last night, 3 apiece for both Leary and Hockman. I believe Virginia Tech had 7 tackles for loss and 5 additional quarterback hurries. So, Mike, just your interpretation of both Hockman and Leary last night and how consequential it was that the pass defense was just not there last night.
I'm not going to bash either of the quarterbacks because I do believe that they're both young and they're both battling every day with each other. So there is some mental aspect there, and there is some, I don't want to mess up so I don't lose my spot. So because there's uncertainty at that position, and especially since they had a quarterback carousel the year before, my thing as a fan and an alumni, I don't want to see the quarterback carousel. I don't want to see it. What I want to see is someone being given the reins and being allowed to grow, whether it be Leary or Hockman. But I think at this point, I think you gave the reins to Hockman, no matter how it happened. I think that you need to just give him the reins and just give him, I'd say, 6 to 8 games to see if he's the guy. I believe in 6 to 8 games, you can figure out if this guy's the guy without having Leary breathing down his neck. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Well, it'll certainly be something to watch for. We'll get the game 3 depth chart on Monday. Personally, I anticipate Devin Leary to be the starter moving forward. You might be a little bit alone as an NC State fan wanting to see Hockman again. And, of course, a Hockman, by no means, it's not going to be his last snaps for NC State. He will certainly get more opportunities, as you mentioned, both young quarterbacks still developing. But there was a clear positive when Leary did come in the game. He saw 3 drives. 2 of them ended up in touchdowns for the Wolfpack. Now, of course, at that point, you're not seeing the ferocious Virginia Tech defense that you saw in the first half. So take it with a grain of salt. Virginia Tech was probably preparing much more for Hockman than they were for Leary. But Leary finishes the night 12 of 16, 165 yards and a touchdown, and a pretty solid quarterback rating with that. And I don't know what you saw, but to me, it was very clear that, they see the arm in Leary. And I think that's where they see the future. Hockman did a great job as a game manager in game 1, but Virginia Tech just stacked the box, forced him to throw, and, throwing 2 interceptions, the arm just wasn't there in this game. We'll see how it translates moving forward. You also mentioned that the backs had a good, solid game, and the run blocking was good too. I mean, the backs still, Jordan Houston, Ricky Person, and Bam Knight all get double-digit carries. Another solid night for them, just not as explosive as the 270-yard game.
You got to expect. I mean, Virginia Tech knew that's the strength of the team, so they decided, all right, we'll make sure we, create some disruption. And at the end of the day, if you're going to run the ball that much, you got to be able to throw the play-action ball. That has to happen. All I ask for is consistency. That's it. I don't care who the quarterback is, but I don't want to flip every week. I don't believe that works at other positions. I don't believe at quarterback that works. When you keep switching quarterbacks, because if you remember in 2013 when I was there, we had Brandon Mitchell, we had Pete Thomas, and it was a rough season because those guys kept getting flipped back and forth every other game. And, you need some consistency at the quarterback position. And I think you can build off either one. So if Leary does have this arm talent, then build with him and be consistent, no matter how bad or good he is. Try to build him up to the point to where if we're down, he can bring us back. That's the problem with NC State I think I see now. If we're down, I don't see us coming back right now. I think we're a team where we have to be up or we have to keep it close. Because if we get down, I don't think we have enough to come back.
Well, that was the luxury of playing with the lead for a majority of that game against Wake Forest in the 45-42 win, is that you get to stick with the rush game, which is the clear strength on this offense, no matter who's in at quarterback, no matter how good the pass blocking is. The running backs are clearly the talent on this offense, and the carries dropped a little bit. I think 47, 48 in the first game, dropped to 43 in this game, a little bit more 50-50 in terms of a pass rush split. But the wide receivers also, played a pretty solid game, in my opinion. I think they played a little bit better than week one against Wake Forest. Devin Carter, an impressive stat line, 4 receptions, 79 yards. CJ Riley gets his first touchdown of the season on his first reception of the season, the only passing touchdown of the game. He finishes with 2 receptions, 24 yards. Emeka Emezi, 4 receptions, 29 yards. And Thayer Thomas had a really good catch on that 37-yard reception from Leary. So just with that, what were your takeaways from the wide receivers and potentially the tight ends as well?
They get more comfortable. And, with quarterback play, you want consistency, you want timing and things like that. I do like the route combinations they're running. I am liking that for the receivers we have. I think that, the backs are getting involved a little more in the pass game, which is good because they're the playmakers, in my opinion, on this team. But I definitely think this receiving core with more consistency at quarterback can get even better. I believe you could potentially have 1,000-yard receiver in your midst if we can find a consistent quarterback to stabilize everything. I think that's what the difference in this year is going to be. If we can find a quarterback who can game, even if it's just game management and keeping us in the game and not losing the game on a consistent basis, I definitely think that we can take another step to getting back in the at least bowl contention. Even though, everybody's going to a bowl, but 500 and above.
Well, going into the season, my season prediction for the record was 5-6 for the NC State team. And that was with could be 6-5, could be 5-6, but I was looking at this team as a 500-ish team with the roster, with the turnover at the coaching position, and considering all of the disruptions in the offseason. It's easy to get, very excited after that week 1 win against an in-state rival. The offense looked so good. The team was so energized because they were so fresh. And then, everybody in our profession, at least, and, speak for it as a player and on your behalf, but we all thought that NC State would have the advantage having that game under belt, but it clearly looked like Virginia Tech was the team that came out explosive and energized in that first quarter, jumping out to that 17-0 lead within about 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah, it just seemed like VTech had more want to. They seemed like, and they were aggressive, and you can't teach that. I think that, schematically, you could call up whatever you want. At the end of the day, players have to do it. And we could say, maybe the coaches could do this, but at the end of the day, the players got to play. I'm of the thought that if I ran the same play, no matter what, if you did it correctly and everybody did their job, it could still be successful. So I think that they have to push more for more aggressiveness and maybe better conditioning just because of how COVID is going right now. Your backups need to be ready to play. I think NC State right now needs to invest in their depth. Because I think that Virginia Tech being down 23 players and some coaches and can still put on a performance like that, I think that just shows their depth. They have great depth and they're coaching their depth. And I think NC State has to coach their depth because obviously people are dropping like flies in the NFL and college football right now. So if they're going to drop like that, you have to be prepared for that. So you need your next guy up to be able to do his thing.
Well, we have to mention the one good aspect of last night was the special teams. Punter Trenton Gill, 6 punts, averaged 51 yards a punt. He had 4 punts of over 50 yards. And then Chris Dunn with a nice 53-yard connection at the end of the first half on that drive where Hockman was finally able to get some rhythm. Any thoughts on the special teams? I know, obviously, if things are going well, you're probably not talking about special teams, but it is a positive to take away.
Oh, for sure. When I was there, we had Nick Sadie, and then after that, it was kind of rough season on kick. I mean, all NC State fans know we've had a few bad run-ins with kickers, so it's good to see that part of the game has been shored up, and I'm glad to see that. I've never really had bad punting, to be honest, at NC State, but the kicking game has been suspect. So it's good that this kid's doing his thing. I enjoy the fact that while he's there, I hope that if it's a late game situation against Clemson, he can make the field goal. So as long as he does that, I'm good.
Well, Mike, let's go ahead and give our game balls for last night. I know it's always tough to give out game balls in a loss than it is in a win, but anybody that stands out to you in particular that you want to give your game ball to? You can't give the offensive line the game ball again last night.
I'm going to give it to the kicker, man. I think that hitting a 53-yarder, staying consistent, and he's hitting his kicks. I mean, I don't think we ever attempted a 53-yarder when I was there with the guys we had after Nick Sadie. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the kicker on O.
Well, I think that's a good pick. Christopher Dunn, that 53-yard connection makes both of his extra point attempts. Hasn't missed a kick yet this season, so good solid start for him, and hopefully for Wolfpack fans, that'll continue to be a trend this season. I'm going to give my game ball to Zonovan Bam Knight. He continued his strong performance from week one. He was leading the backs all night in yards per carry. He finishes the night with 94 yards on 14 carries for 6.7 yards per carry. His longest being a 14-yard run, so that shows that most of his runs were solid, 4, 5, 6-yard pickups, and was able to move the sticks with him. He gets the most carries last night. He had the least carries in week one. He gets 14. Ricky Person gets 13. Jordan Houston finishes the night with 7 carries. So look for Bam to get fed a little bit more if he continues this dominant performance, because last season he finished as the Pack's leader in yards per carry with 5.5 average. And so far, 6.7. I think the first game he was 8.8 a carry. So solid start for him, and hopefully you can continue to get him involved as an explosive playmaker on this offense. But Mike, any last thoughts before we sign off here and I do my last plugs?
Isaiah Moore had a good game. I like his game. That Thomas kid, Drake Thomas or whatever his name is, he's still flying around. And I think the defense, continue the run into the ball, never stop that. But I think if they're going to be the type of defense that they want to be, they got to start setting the edge and they got to start getting turnovers. I think that helps out young defenses. If you can stress turnovers, then, when they're getting driven on, they can really pump themselves up, with a good turnover or two, So, and then on the back end, I think they just need more harmony. They just need more time together. They need to talk with each other, and they need to spend more time getting to know each other and learn what each other does well in coverage so they can help each other out.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Isaiah Moore. He certainly had one of the best games on defense last night. He finishes the night as the team leader with 9 total tackles. He has 1 of 2 sacks on the NC State defense and in the loss, and also finishes the night with 2 solo tackles for a loss of 15 yards. So good solid night for him. He was obviously disappointed in the post game, says that, he missed a couple tackles on his part. So he's still got some things to work on. And Drake Thomas, always expect a physical performance from him. He's a hitter. He's an old school linebacker. The problem, I think, last night for him was just being moved around a little bit too much, with the absence of Peyton Wilson. He moves from the Sam linebacker to the Will linebacker last night. And, you like to have your full personnel and have your guys ready to go in the positions that they prepare for frequently. But Doran has mentioned Drake Thomas as a guy that can fluctuate in that linebacker core and pretty much play all 3 of the positions. So he's kind of the versatile guy on the linebacker core, if you will. But that does it for us. Virginia Tech 45, NC State 24. NC State drops to 1-1 on the season, and they prepare for Game 3 at Pittsburgh and Heinz Field next Saturday at noon. So finally, NC State fans will get that noon kickoff that they've all been waiting for. And I certainly won't mind staying up until 3 a.m. the past 2 Saturdays. But be sure to follow us on social media. Please give Mike a follow at SavageMike90 on Twitter. You can give me a follow at Justin H. Will. Be sure to follow our Twitter account at the Wolfpacker as well. Give us a like on Facebook. And while you're at it, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen to them. We like to hear what you have to say. And, of course, we're going to put this on YouTube too. So please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like, give us a thumbs up, and tell us what you like about this. We hope to have Mike back again throughout the season. So, Mike, appreciate it as always. And
thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Well, have a good rest of your weekend. And for Mike Rose, this has been Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.